Hanlon. I'm on the React Native core team at Facebook. I also help out with Facebook Jest. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm from Akron, Ohio, home of LeBron James. So, React. Who here has used React? Almost everybody. React is growing at a huge rate. We just passed 5.7 million weekly downloads. And I think React is so popular because of the three areas that we all harp on. It's declarative, it's component-based, and you can learn once, write anywhere. This was something that we talked about during the React Native release, and we're going to focus on the learn once, write anywhere in this talk. So for React, we have a number of different platforms that we support and that you can write apps on. You can write React apps on iOS. This is Facebook Messenger, which uses React Native inside of Facebook. This is, you could also write apps on Android. This is the Ads Manager inside of Facebook that's written in React Native. And you can also write React apps on web. This is Netflix. You can see that they're using the production build. There's a ton of really great web apps that are out there. But there's also some other platforms that are not as well known. So you can write React apps on Windows and Mac OS, thanks to some work that Microsoft has done. They're actually have built some React Native frameworks that allow you to build React apps on a lot of different devices, and including Skype, which is, I think, one of the largest React Native apps out there. In addition to their framework supporting Windows and Mac OS, they've also created a way to write React in Xbox apps. So this is a screenshot from their demo where you can write a React app and it will display on your Xbox along with some native modules to handle the voice activation. We also have, VR for Oculus venues. So if you've used Oculus venues, all the menus are written in React Native, and tvOS. So Unsplash has this really great Apple TV app that you can use, and that's also written in React Native. And finally, Electron, which everybody knows Slack, and Slack's written in React using Electron. So these are just a few of all of the platforms that you can write in React. And for all of these platforms, React enabled developers to learn once and write anywhere. You just learn React, and then you can write on all of these different platforms. You don't have to learn how to write like Xbox native code. You don't have to learn how to write a ton of like tvOS code. You just write React. That's one of the most powerful things about React. So we've checked that off. So what we want to look at today is something that we haven't focused a ton on, and that's to write once, run anywhere. So the idea here is that you write React code, and then you can copy that into your other apps and use those everywhere. And you can do that in a large part with React Native. You can do that on iOS, on Android, Windows, Mac OS, Xbox One, VR, and tvOS. So all these platforms all run React Native. So if you have code in one of them, you can copy and use it in one of the other platforms. But two of the platforms that we saw earlier are not listed here. So like web and Electron, you can't share code between these different apps. So we have write once, run anywhere mostly, but not entirely. And if you look at the two that are not supported, they're really one. They're really both web. When you write an Electron app, you're writing a web app. So let's talk about writing React Native on web. So Sarah, who's here, had this great tweet. Do people know about React Native Web? It is amazing. And I agree, and we're going to talk about it today. You actually, if you've used Twitter, Twitter's mobile site, Nicholas here, who wrote React Native Web, said a year and a half ago that you're using React Native on the web. So if you go to mobile.twitter.com and load it up, and load the tweets, this is running React Native on a website. And you can check for yourself, open up the dev tools, and you'll see on the right-hand side a ton of class names that are prepended with RN. This is the way React Native Web handles classes for a really good reason. And Nicholas has a talk that he gave last year at React Rally that explains a lot of the problems that this solves. What's new and interesting for Twitter using React Native is if you go to your option, if you have the option to view the new Twitter desktop, the new Twitter desktop experience is also written in React Native. I think it's their mobile site launched on native that they have in beta now, and you can see that that's also in React Native. So we're starting to move into have like large-scale web apps in React Native. So as I said, this is written by Nicholas when he was at Twitter. He's at Facebook now. Lucky us. This is the repo, React Native Web. You can see it calls out two specific benefits. One, you can build high-quality web interfaces. We're going to dig into this a little bit, but I think that this is the most compelling reason for why you would want to write a website using React Native. Because we're a library that wraps the platform, we can solve a lot of problems for you so you don't have to deal with them. And we're going to go into some of those. But you can also, once you use it on your web app and you deploy other apps, you'll also be able to achieve write once, render anywhere. So he lists a few companies like MLS, Uber, The Times that are using React Native Web. It's a really great library. We're going to dive into it. But it's not really a niche thing. So what are some of the benefits of React Native Web? I think that there's three main benefits that are relevant to web developers. The first is gesture handling. As web developers, we don't generally think about like touch devices and other non-mouse and keyboard devices, but with React Native Web we do. Accessibility. There's a ton of accessibility props native on the DOM, but it's kind of hard to keep track of which ones you use and where, and also internationalization. I think as like we move into more of a global sphere and people are writing apps, internationalization is becoming more and more prevalent and necessary. So let's take a look at gesture handling. Let's see a platform example. So this is just a regular button, a DOM element, and you can see like really basic, handles clicks really well. So you can use a button element to handle clicks. But what if you are on mobile and you start swiping around, right? This handles it okay. In this case, it shouldn't register the click handler because you're releasing outside of the click area. But in this example is where it really starts to break down. So on mobile, we have this idea of slop. And that's, that concept is that your thumb, or whatever you're swiping with, can be kind of sloppily around a button. And in many cases, it's a good experience. You want to register those clicks. If you don't register them, then people will get frustrated and not understand why your buttons don't work. So if we look at how React Native handles this, we have a concept instead of buttons as touchables, and they have press handlers. Here we're going to use touchable opacity, and we're going to take a look at the same example. Now, if you notice, this is not a this is running on iOS on an iPhone X, but it's in a web browser. This is in Safari running on localhost. And our taps work great. And our scrolling outside the area works great. But what you get by using React Native is the slop area registers. And the other thing you can notice here is that there's feedback for the presses. So as you're pressed in, even though you leave the press area, it stays pressed in visually so that you can know and understand that what's going to happen when you release your thumb. In this example, the previous example, you can see as you draw all the way out of the press area, it depresses. So you know when you release your thumb that it's not going to register a click. So this is the difference between just using like the native platform and React Native. You can achieve the React Native experience using just the raw DOM, but it's not trivial. And we handle it for you with React Native. The second area that we're going to look at is accessibility, or A11Y. In the platform, let's take a look at a div that's clickable, and it's going to take us to a link. And we're going to load up an Android app that's using a screen reader, which are becoming more and more popular. You can see here, as we're tabbing through the different areas on the device, we're not registering that the link is tabbable. So somebody that was using your site with a screen reader is not going to know that you have a link that you can click. If we use a React Native element, we have this prop that you can add that's accessible. And what this does is it extracts away the DOM elements that you'll need to add to it in order to add it to the tab order. And you can just pass this flag, and when you do that, then it's visible in the tab order. And you can see down at the bottom that it's actually telling you, giving you the feedback that it gives you for any link or button. So you can hit Alt-Enter or to register it. So that's the difference between the accessibility between the platform and React Native. Again, you can achieve this natively on the DOM with some DOM properties, but we handle it for you with React Native. And we have a number of different accessibility properties like label, hint, role, states, traits, many more. And you can just tag these onto any of your elements and be on your way and have a really nice experience for people that need these types of supports. Cool. The third area is internationalization, I18N. We'll look at another example with the platform. Here we're going to have a div that has a right-hand column that we are aligning with float right, and a left-hand column. It's going to look like this. So you have on the left a big area and a right sidebar. If you have done any internationalization in your past, you know you can add DOM property dir right to left. And in theory, that flips the entire screen for like right to left languages. But in this example, when you try to use dir right to left, this isn't flipped. It flipped the text inside of the left-hand side, but the right sidebar is still on the right-hand side. So somebody that's, if you're setting a text to right to left language, they're going to expect the screen to be flipped and for the text to read right to left. So you can see this is what happens when they're flipped. With React Native, we'll run the same example with a left side and a right sidebar. This is going to be laid out with Flexbox. I didn't include the styles. One of the benefits of React Native Web is that it forces you to use Flexbox. So if you don't like Flexbox, sorry. But if you do use Flexbox, especially if you're forced to use it, it will make things lay out a lot better for you. What we provide with React Native is this function I18N Manager, Internationalization Manager. Here you can force right to left, and with this one line of code, it will flip your screen, and you can see the sidebar is now on the left-hand side, and the left-hand side is on the right-hand side. And this is the experience that users that read right to left would expect. And because you're using Flexbox, we can kind of make some guarantees about it and flip some properties for you automatically. So this is really great. So you can compare the platform experience with the React Native web experience. And I think it's self-evidently better. So those are the three areas. Even aside from write once, run everywhere, you can start using React Native Web for these reasons alone, and you're going to create better user experience. But this talk is about write once, run everywhere. So what's blocking us from this writing once? Well, on the web, our React code looks like this. You have divs, buttons, some text, and everywhere else, we use views, touchables, text components. And in order to write once and run everywhere, we need it so that you can use this view touchable text components everywhere. And then we can run React everywhere. So let's look at an example. Here we're going to have a project layout that is an apps directory with a mobile app and a web app, and then a shared component directory that just has a header and a container component called React Everywhere. So we're going to look at the apps first, and then we'll look at the shared components. First, the mobile app. This is done. This is just your expo app.js. We can import React, import our shared component React Everywhere, just render the React Everywhere component, and export it. And then in the web app, we'll do the same thing. We'll import React Everywhere, and export the component. In React Everywhere, I've collapsed a lot of the markup and styles, but the general idea here is that we'll have a class that's going to render a button and a counter, and there's some styles that are associated with it, and both the mobile app and the web app are going to use it. And then we're going to have a header. The header has a little bit of React Native code in it, so we'll import React, import some React Native components. Now here, one of the nice things about React Native Web is that it's recommended to use a Babel configuration that would rewrite React Native imports to React Native Web. So in the web app, this is actually importing React Native Web, but on the mobile app, it's importing React Native. But that doesn't matter to you because you can just copy all of the code from header.js or the React Everywhere component and paste them into your app. We're going to render a view with some text. It's going to have some styles, and we're going to export it. Cool. So let's run it. We're going to run the app in the browser on an iPhone 10 and a Pixel 2. So you can see that these are all running at the same time. They're all separate apps running on separate devices from the same code. And we can increment all of the counters, which is pretty great. Now let's change some code. So here we come over to header.js. We're going to add text React Everywhere, and by the time we swipe back over to our devices, all 3 devices have hot reloaded. So this demonstrates that we have the same component running on mobile and web from the same code base, and you can change your code once and it will hot reload everywhere, which is really dope. Cool, so we've moved from write once, run anywhere mostly to write once, run everywhere. If you have this set up like this, then you can have all of your design components set up in your design system. You can copy and paste your button design component, a modal component, and paste them into any of these platforms. In addition to being able to write once, run anywhere, you also have all these benefits of gesture handling, accessibility, internationalization, and you're going to write better user experiences with your apps. So that's just a small demo to kind of introduce everybody to the concept of React Native Web. Give it a try and see if you like it. And thanks.
This conference has been gradually getting better for me. The quality of the lineup is usually really good, and this is something I'm really saying thumbs up.
They're really trying to get speakers here that are pushing to the future of web technologies.
I just feel like it's a very community-driven conference. It also has a lot of quality, and people are just nice. Hi, my name is Sarah, and this is AgentConf in Dornbirn.
Amazing venue. Austria is beautiful. Meeting all of the people in the community and getting to go and hang out and ski.